So it does take me on to the cemetery, by the way. So obviously there is a lot of deaths, and and I do feel for all the families out there. A good friend of mine, her uncle passed away. So it is prevalent. It is there. The council made the decision just after we had our chat last week, which at that time I think we was yet to 66 cases, which was last week.
Something like that when we first spoke, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a massive jump, isn't it? If you think about it, in a space of virtually 7 days, we've gone up to 300.
Yeah, in fact, it's up to 421 today. I've just looked up inbox, and according to Martin Tett of the Buckinghamshire Council, the number of deaths as at midweek was around 50. So that will have gone up. Yes, there have been certainly 2 funerals in the town cemetery that I've been aware of that I believe are coronavirus related.
Okay. So, 50 deaths in the Buckingham. It's sad to hear. So again, so this brings us. That's 50 families and obviously relations that want to obviously pay their respects. And is there going to be any leeway of this lifting this obviously ban on visitors at the moment?
This is one of those quite tough decisions. The town council took advice from the National Association of Local Councils. They said their interpretation of the government guidelines was, well, there's nothing specifically related to cemeteries, but they advised, as a precautionary measure, they recommended we close, and we did that. And I know that's a particularly tough thing. We've had a relatively small number, but members of the public complaining or unhappy that the cemetery isn't open either for their daily exercise or to actually visit the grave of a loved one who's passed away, whether recently or some while ago. But of course, it is difficult not being able to visit your deceased relatives. It's also difficult not being able to visit your living relatives, like my son, for example, or relatives who are ill in hospital, because Stoke Mandeville have restricted visiting, and I think that's absolutely right. I think we've really got to keep this lockdown as much as possible. I will talk to the town clerk of the town council whether we think there is any scope for changing that decision. I think probably the majority of councils are closing their cemeteries to visitors, but a reasonable minority are not doing so. So I think it comes down to each council's individual judgment, really.
Yeah, could the council be looking at some kind of like booking system where obviously, because you've got to keep the numbers down, you want to keep the social distancing done, so at least, again, not 2 meters, at least 2 meters. I must reiterate it to quite a few people, it's at least 2 meters. Is there, like working with the church network, and maybe people can volunteer to obviously make sure that it stays within those realms of only certain people can come in and you keep the numbers down? Is that something that maybe is a possibility? The only reason I'm saying it,
I don't know, Martin. I'm thinking about the logistics of how the cemetery normally works. It's actually not just someone unlocks the gates in the morning and locks them at dusk.
It would have to be manned, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Someone has to be on hand or on call if there's an accident or something. There are public toilets in the cemetery. Obviously, they have to be regularly cleaned. Even more so, they have to be very regularly cleaned, very thoroughly cleaned. Otherwise, that's another risk to the public who are touching the taps and handles in the toilets. We can't be taking risks like that. So it's all of a sudden you're talking about having manpower diverted from other work that's going on for the council into the cemetery to make sure it is a safe place. And then how do we ensure people are keeping social distances? the paths through the cemetery are quite narrow. I think if, for example, we had opened this weekend because other parks and open spaces are closed, you might get quite a large number of people wanting to go there, and that all of a sudden becomes a potential difficult situation. So there's no easy answers to things like this.
I'm sure there isn't. And I mean, again, asking the question, people have spoke to me, and it's just relaying it across. I understand that you're in a no-win situation. If you open them, people are gonna say you shouldn't be opening them because you're taking resources away. And if you don't open them, you've got the people obviously saying, why aren't you opening them? You know, so totally understand that. But maybe it's just, maybe people can, comment, let us know, maybe to yourself or even to me at FBL Broadcasting, and we can obviously chat through that maybe in an update next week or something. But I'm sure you'll speak to Martin Tett and the rest of the wonderful people working within the council, and maybe you can come up with an idea or maybe something. At least that's something we can look at. And
we're always listening.
Yeah, always.